The one religion problem, what believers and atheists actually have in common. Okay, I need to ask you something tonight, and I need you to stay with me here because this isn't about politics. This is about something deeper, something that affects how we see ourselves, how we see each other, and how we make sense of the world we're living in. Would you be happier if you believed in God? Now, before you answer that, before you decide whether to click away or lean in, let me tell you why I'm asking. Because I've been thinking about this question for a long time. And recently I came across an observation that stopped me cold. Not because it was hostile to faith, not because it was some militant atheist screed, but because it was logical. And logic, when applied to our deepest beliefs, can be deeply uncomfortable. Here's the observation, and I want you to really sit with it. A devout Christian looks at Islam and says, "That can't be true. A mountain moving toward Muhammad, that's mythology." A devout Muslim looks at Christianity and says, God impregnating a virgin, the creator of the universe having a human son, that's impossible. A devout Jew looks at both and says, Jesus was a good teacher, a fine prophet even, but the Son of God, you've gone too far. And here's the thing, here's what most people never stop to consider. Every single one of these believers, deeply faithful, profoundly sincere, is functionally an atheist when it comes to every religion except their own. Let that sink in for a moment. If you're new to this channel, subscribe right now and turn on notifications because we're going to have conversations here that you won't find anywhere else. Conversations that challenge you, that respect your intelligence, that treat you like the thoughtful adult you are. Now, let me be absolutely clear about what I'm saying and what I'm not saying. I'm not saying religious belief is foolish. I'm not saying faith doesn't matter. I'm not saying people who believe in God are deluded. What I'm saying is that there's a logical observation here that deserves serious consideration regardless of where you land on questions of faith. Think about what it means. A Christian can look at the claims of Hinduism with its pantheon of deities, its stories of Vishnu and Shiva and Ganesha, and say with complete confidence, those are beautiful myths, but they're not literally true. A Hindu can look at Christianity and say, the idea that God became a single human being, died, and physically rose from the dead, that's a poetic metaphor at best. A Buddhist can look at all of it and say, you're missing the point entirely. The divine isn't something out there, it's something within. Every believer in every tradition has already done the work of dismissing the supernatural claims of every other tradition. They've already concluded that billions of other people, equally sincere, equally convinced, equally certain they've found the truth, are simply wrong. Here's what you need to understand. This isn't about mocking faith. This is about recognizing something profound about human psychology and the nature of belief itself. When a Christian says, I don't believe in Zeus, they're expressing the exact same logical position an atheist holds toward Christianity. The only difference is the atheist has extended that skepticism one religion further. Stay with me here because this distinction matters enormously. The atheist isn't saying anything different about your religion than you're already saying about every other religion on earth. They're just being consistent. They're applying the same standard of evidence, the same logical scrutiny, the same healthy skepticism to one additional set of claims. Now, I've been doing this long enough to know that some of you are uncomfortable right now. Some of you are nodding. Some of you are angry. And all of those reactions are valid because we're touching something deep here, something that goes to the core of how we understand ourselves and our place in the universe. Let me share something personal. I've stood in cathedrals that took my breath away. I've watched people find comfort in prayer during the darkest moments of their lives. I've seen communities come together through shared faith in ways that nothing else could replicate. The human need for transcendence, for meaning, for connection to something larger than ourselves, that's real. That's not going away, and I would never dismiss it. But I've also watched people use their certainty about God to justify terrible things. I've seen faith weaponized against the vulnerable. I've witnessed the damage that comes when someone believes they have exclusive access to absolute truth. And here's the thing most people never consider. That certainty, that absolute conviction that you've found the one true path while billions of others are wandering in darkness, that's not a feature of religion. It's a feature of human psychology. We're wired to believe we're right. We're wired to see our tribe as the chosen ones and everyone else as mistaken at best, damned at worst. If you're finding this valuable, hit that like button right now because this conversation is about to go deeper. And the algorithm needs to know that people want this kind of content. Let me walk you through something. There are approximately 4,200 religions currently practiced on Earth. 4,200 distinct belief systems, each with their own creation story, their own moral framework, their own explanation for why we're here and what happens when we die. Now, if you're a Christian, you've already concluded that 4,199 of those religions are wrong, at least in their core supernatural claims. You've already done the analytical work of dismissing thousands of years of Hindu theology, Buddhist philosophy, Islamic scholarship, and countless indigenous spiritual traditions. You've already said those sincere, devout people, many of whom have studied their traditions their entire lives, many of whom have had profound spiritual experiences, they're mistaken. And you might be right, that's not my point. My point is that you've already adopted the atheist's methodology for every religion but one. You've already said extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and their evidence doesn't meet my standard. Here's why this matters, and this is important. We live in a moment of profound division, political division, cultural division, and yes, religious division. People are sorting themselves into tribes, demonizing the other side, becoming more certain and less curious with each passing day. And I think this observation, this recognition that we're all skeptics when it comes to other people's deepest beliefs, could actually bring us together rather than drive us apart. Think about what that means. The evangelical Christian and the secular atheist have something profound in common. They both look at the claims of Scientology and say that's obviously made up. They both look at ancient Greek mythology and say, beautiful stories, but not literally true. They both apply rigorous skepticism to supernatural claims that fall outside their own framework. The difference isn't in methodology, it's in where they draw the line. Now, some of you are thinking, but Marcus, my faith is different. My religion is based on actual historical events, on eyewitness testimony, on prophecies fulfilled, on personal experience of the divine. And I hear you, I genuinely do. But here's what I need you to consider. Every believer in every tradition has reasons they find compelling. The Muslim points to the literary perfection of the Quran as evidence of divine origin. The Hindu points to thousands of years of spiritual practice and wisdom. The Buddhist points to the practical results of meditation and mindfulness. Each one has evidence they find convincing. Each one has experiences they consider proof. Each one has a logical framework that from inside their tradition feels airtight. And yet you've already decided most of them are wrong. Stay with me here because this is where it gets really interesting. The question isn't whether God exists. That's a separate conversation. And frankly, it's not one I'm qualified to answer. The question is how we know what we know, how we decide what counts as evidence, how we distinguish genuine revelation from sincere delusion. And the honest answer, the uncomfortable answer, is that we don't have a reliable method. If we did, there wouldn't be 4,200 religions. There'd be one. If personal spiritual experience were reliable evidence of objective truth, then Hindu mystical experiences would point to the same conclusions as Christian mystical experiences. But they don't. Each person's profound encounter with the divine confirms the specific beliefs of their specific tradition. At least one of them, probably both, is experiencing something generated entirely by their own mind and culture. And that doesn't make those experiences worthless. It just means they're not reliable evidence for claims about the external world. Let me tell you what I've learned from thinking about this. The most dangerous people in history have been the ones who were absolutely certain they were right. Not the skeptics, not the questioners, not the people who held their beliefs humbly, aware that they might be wrong. The dangerous ones are the true believers who cannot conceive of the possibility that their understanding might be incomplete. That's true in politics, it's true in ideology, and yes, it's true in religion. The person who says, I believe this is true, but I acknowledge I might be wrong, is fundamentally different from the person who says, I know this is true. And anyone who disagrees is either stupid or evil. We are missing humility in our current cultural moment. Not weakness, but humility. The recognition that human beings, including ourselves, are prone to error. Drop a comment right now. Tell me what you believe and why you believe it, because this isn't about converting anyone. It's about understanding each other. Let me come back to the original question. Would I be happier if I believed in God? Honestly, I don't know. I've seen people find profound comfort in faith, giving meaning to suffering and hope in the face of death. But I've also seen the anxiety that comes from believing you might be disappointing an all-knowing deity, the guilt that accumulates when you're told your natural impulses are sinful. Belief isn't a simple toggle between happiness and despair. It's complicated. And here's what I think is genuinely important. Whether you believe or don't believe, you deserve to live your life without being demonized for your conclusions. The believer who has genuinely wrestled with doubt and chosen faith deserves respect. The atheist who has genuinely wrestled with the human need for meaning and chosen skepticism deserves respect. What doesn't deserve respect is certainty without humility. Here's where it gets genuinely important for all of us. We're living through a moment where people are using religion as a weapon, where politicians wrap themselves in religious language while pursuing policies that contradict everything those religions actually teach, where Christian nationalism has become a political identity that has very little to do with the teachings of Christ. When someone tells you they want to make America a Christian nation, ask them which Christianity they mean. Catholic, Protestant, Baptist, Methodist, each one has different interpretations of Scripture. The person advocating for values in government has already decided that most Christians throughout history have been wrong about those values. That's not religion. That's power wearing religious clothing. Let me leave you with three things tonight. First, the observation that we're all atheists about most religions isn't an attack on faith. It's a call for humility, for recognizing that certainty is harder to justify than we usually admit. Second, the human need for meaning, for transcendence, for connection to something larger than ourselves. That need is real and legitimate, regardless of whether any supernatural claims are true. You don't have to believe in God to believe in goodness. The important question isn't what you believe, but how you live. Third, and this is crucial, the most dangerous form of belief is the kind that cannot tolerate doubt, that needs everyone else to be wrong in order to feel right. The healthiest faith I've witnessed is the kind that can sit with uncertainty. And honestly, the healthiest skepticism works the same way. The thoughtful recognition that none of us have access to absolute truth. What happens in the months and years ahead depends on whether we can find that common ground, whether we can recognize that the person who believes differently isn't our enemy. We're all wrestling with the same fundamental questions about meaning, purpose, and how to live a good life. We just come to different conclusions. And that's okay. What's not okay is using those conclusions to justify cruelty, to justify exclusion, or to justify treating other human beings as less than human. If you've stayed with me this long, thank you. Subscribe to this channel because we're going to keep having these conversations. I'll be watching the comments. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and whatever you believe, hold it humbly.